The bell at Greenwood High rang like a tired warning, 5 metallic notes that did not so much signal an ending as admit defeat. Desks shuffled, backpacks groaned, voices rose and fell in waves the way a storm gathers and disperses over a restless sea. And at the back of room 213, a boy with hair the color of wheat that's been left to rot in the rain kept his gaze fixed on the window, studying the way the maple leaves outside clung to branches as if they, too, were out of places to go. Ethan. Miller, 17, white, shoulders hunched like someone bracing against invisible blows, had become Greenwood's roomer. Some said he'd been suspended for fighting. Others said he'd broken into a teacher's car. A quiet few, the ones who knew he came to school without lunch, said he'd been caught stealing pizza slices from the cafeteria because you can't learn on an empty stomach, and shame is not protein. Up front, Mr. Elijah Carter erased the day's notes in neat, deliberate strokes. He was tall, black, mid-40s, and his suits were as impeccably pressed as the lines he drew between what mattered and what didn't. He had a habit of pausing before he spoke, letting the room exhale its noise, and then pitching his voice, somewhere between encouragement and challenge, so that you felt both called out and called up. "Homework," he said, capping the marker. "Finish Baldwin's Sonny's Blues and write the paragraph I asked for. 1 moment of turning." Groans, a few good-natured protests, a shuffled chorus of, "Do we have to?" "You don't have to do anything," Mr. Carter replied, mildly, a corner of his mouth quirking. "You get to. That's what it means to be alive and still deciding." He waited while they filed out, knuckles knocking on desks, the click of a phone case, sneakers squeaking on linoleum. Ethan did not move. He stayed in his seat as if pinned there by inertia, eyes a cloudy blue that rarely met anyone's directly. When the last student left, the classroom settled into the soft hush of an emptied shell. The clock ticked. The maple outside scraped its red fingertips on the glass. "You've been quiet," Mr. Carter said, not looking at Ethan yet. He knew the boy would bristle if observed too closely, the way a stray dog bares its teeth at kindness. "I'm always quiet," Ethan muttered. "Not like this." Mr. Carter sat on the corner of his desk. "You liked the first half of the story. You underlined a line I've never seen anyone underline in 5 years. Ethan's shoulders twitched. "Which one?" "The part where the narrator admits he's afraid of his own anger because he doesn't know where it will end." Mr. Carter's eyes lifted, warm, unflinching. "I don't grade underlines, Ethan. I notice them." A muscle feathered in Ethan's jaw. He slid the book deeper into his backpack like a secret. There were faint white scars on his forearms, old and new, a topography of pain that adults pretended not to see so they could maintain the fiction that everything was under control. "You can go," Ethan said, voice flat. "I mean, I can go." "You can," Mr. Carter agreed. "Or you can help me stack the chairs and tell me what you meant by the sentence you didn't write." "I didn't write anything." "Yes," Mr. Carter said. "But you thought something. I teach English, but I don't mind silence when it's honest." For a moment, Ethan didn't move. Then he stood in a grudging movement and began stacking chairs on desks. They worked without speaking. The room reorganized itself under their hands. 2 people, 1 routine, the kind of chore that can sound like meditation when the world in your head is loud. "My mom works nights," Ethan said finally, without looking up. "Double shifts at the nursing home. It's just me and my little sister until she gets back." "Your sister's name?" Mr. Carter asked. "Junie," he said, quick, protective. "She's in 3rd grade." "Junie," Mr. Carter echoed, as if filing the name away. "Junie and Ethan, that's a lot. I'm not asking for—" Ethan started, then stopped. Anger rose in him like a choking thing. "Forget it, I wasn't offering anything," Mr. Carter said softly. "I was just witnessing." The word landed like a pebble, breaking the surface tension of a pond. Ethan's mouth flattened, and for a brief second, A flash of tired, fierce gratitude crossed his face so fast it would have been easy to miss. "Okay," he said, turning for the door. "Ethan," Mr. Carter said, "we're starting a debate unit next week. I want you partnered with Sophia Reyes." Ethan's head jerked. "She hates me." "Sophia hates a lot of things," Mr. Carter said. "But she doesn't hate the truth, and I think you have some of that if you learn to aim it. The topic is whether discipline should be restorative or punitive. I want you arguing restorative. Why? Because you argue best for what you don't yet believe." Ethan barked a laugh. "You think I'm going to say people deserve second chances?" "I think," Mr. Carter said, "you know exactly how hard it is to ask for one." Ethan opened his mouth to protest and then shut it again. He slung his backpack over one shoulder and left without saying goodbye. It took 3 days for the rumor to metastasize. On Wednesday morning, the office announced that 2 laptops and a projector had gone missing from the media center. On Thursday, the security officer visited homerooms with a clipboard, scanning faces over the rim of his glasses. By lunch, the whispers sharpened to a point and found their mark. Miller. A boy in a varsity jacket shouldered past Ethan in the hallway. Lance Hargrove, quarterback, smile like a blunted blade. "How many Chromebooks you get for those tracks on your arm?" Ethan didn't rise, but his eyes cut sideways and darkened. He liked to think of himself as an empty room. No. One could enter without his permission, but his body betrayed him. The tremor in his hands. The way his breath hitched like the clutch in an old car. "Back off, Lance," Sophia Reyes snapped from behind her locker door. She was sharp in every way. Sharp mind, sharp eyeliner, sharp opinions. "If we're stereotyping, shouldn't we start with the guy whose dad owns a pawn shop?" Lance flushed and stepped toward her. Mr. Carter's voice floated from the end of the hallway. "Hargrove, walk." Lance walked. Sophia slammed her locker and stared at Ethan. "You good?" "I'm fine," he said. Then, because he'd promised himself he would try, just once, he added, "Thanks." She tilted her head. "Don't prove me wrong. Debate practice, after school. Don't be late." He was late. 10 minutes, then 15. When he finally slipped into room 213, Mr. Carter raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. Sophia sprawled in a seat, twirling a pen. "You bring notes?" she asked. Ethan held up a crumpled page. Sophia scanned it, eyes flicking. "You're arguing restorative now? I thought you were a kick-them-out-and-lock-the-door guy." Ethan shrugged. "Didn't say I believed it. Said I'd argue it." "Pick an entry point," Mr. Carter said from the window. "A story, a fact, a wound. And don't confuse. Volume with conviction. Conviction doesn't shout. It knocks." Ethan's mouth twisted. "What if nobody opens?" "Then you learn how to speak through wood," Mr. Carter said, turning, "and make a door where there wasn't one." They worked. They argued. Sophia threw counterpoints like darts, and Ethan snatched them mid-air and bent them into fuel. When his voice cracked, it wasn't from shouting. It was from the discovery that he could build something with language that didn't collapse under its own weight. When he stumbled, Mr. Carter didn't praise him falsely or let him drown. He stood at the edge and tossed a rope called precision. At 6 o'clock, the intercom hissed. "All after-school activities, please note. The building will close at 7. "Go home," Mr. Carter said, collecting handouts. "Eat, sleep, try again tomorrow." "Mr. Carter," Ethan asked, "when you were a kid, were you like me?" Mr. Carter smiled, slow. "I was a hurricane pretending to be a breeze." "What changed?" "I met a teacher who didn't mistake my thunder for the weather," he said simply. "She told me storms end, and then she made me prove it by writing about it every day for a year." Ethan shook his head. "I wouldn't have lasted." "Yet here you are," Mr. Carter said, making a tiny gesture with 2 fingers as if lifting something invisible. "Still." On Friday morning, the principal's voice crackled over the speakers. "An update on the missing items. We have reason to believe students were involved. If any of you have information, please. The door to Mr. Carter's classroom opened mid-sentence. Officer Keene and Assistant Principal Ward stepped in. Ward's smile had the precise politeness of a locked gate. "Mr. Carter," Ward said, "we need to speak with Ethan Miller." Ethan went cold. The whole room felt as if it were suddenly tilting. Mr. Carter did not look surprised. He set down his marker and nodded once. "Ethan," Ward said, "come with us." 100 eyes turned. Some gleamed with curiosity, a few with something uglier. Ethan stood, spine iron stiff, and walked out. His heartbeat was a drumline. In the hallway, the sound bled away into a muffled thud. They led him to the office, sat him in a chair that squeaked like a guilty thing, and asked him where he was. "On Wednesday after school." "Home," Ethan said. "With who?" "My sister." "Any adults present?" "No." Assistant Principal Ward folded his hands. "Ethan, a custodian reports seeing you near the media center that afternoon. I walked past it to get to the bus. Did you go inside?" "No." Officer Keene watched him with the professional calm of someone who had seen boys like Ethan deflate and confess. "We can check the cameras." "They don't work," Ethan said before he could stop himself. The moment the words left his mouth, he felt them roost on his shoulder like a crow. Ward's eyebrows lifted. "How do you know that?" Ethan swallowed. "Everybody knows that. Everybody." Ward's smile didn't move. "You can go back to class." In the doorway, Ethan almost collided with Mr. Carter. The teacher's eyes moved from Ethan's face to Ward's, then back again, clocking it all, saying nothing. Out loud, "May I borrow my student for a minute?" Mr. Carter asked mildly. Ward hesitated. "We're in the middle of—" "In the hallway," Mr. Carter clarified. They stepped into the corridor's dim light. Mr. Carter didn't offer comfort. He offered posture. "You answer what they ask. You do not volunteer guesses to fill." "There's silence," he said. "Silence isn't empty. It's leverage." "I didn't take anything," Ethan blurted. "I didn't ask if you did," Mr. Carter said. "But I believe you." Ethan's throat burned. "That makes one of us." "Mr." Carter's gaze softened and then, without warning, sharpened. "You know something about those cameras, don't you?" Ethan stared at the tiles. "My friend used to brag about it. Once, he had a cousin who— Look, it doesn't matter. It matters if it keeps you from being the most convenient." "Story," Mr. Carter said. "Who's the friend?" Ethan shook his head. Fear skittered up his spine in quick, cold feet. "If I say anything, they'll—" He swallowed. "It's Lance. Happy?" Mr. Carter's eyebrows rose a fraction. "No," he said, "but I'm listening. I was with Junie Wednesday. Lance asked me to go with him to the field after school. I said no. He said he had business. He laughed about cameras like he wasn't scared of anything ever." Ethan's voice trembled despite him. "His he knows people." Mr. Carter drew a slow breath. The hall clock's red second hand carved the minute into little wounds. "You did the right thing telling me," he said finally. "Now let me decide." "What to do with it? Don't," Ethan said, horror blooming. "Don't tell them I said anything. Please, you don't know what he's like." "I know exactly what he's like," Mr. Carter said, not unkindly. "I taught his brother, and I buried a student once because I was too cautious with the truth. I won't do that again." Something in Ethan's face cracked, and with it, the smallest intake of relief. I am not alone in this crooked hallway. The weekend passed in tense knots. Ethan did debate research between microwaving ramen and helping Junie with her times tables. Their mother came home Saturday morning with swollen feet and the kind of dazed exhaustion that made even her smiles look like bruises. Ethan hid the letter from school about the missing equipment. He did not tell her about the office. He did not mention Lance. On Sunday night, a text came from an unknown number. "You like telling stories, Miller? Meet me behind the gym tomorrow, 7 p.m. We'll see how brave you are when it's just you and me." Ethan stared at the phone until the words blurred. He felt a familiar corrosive rage, the kind that ate your lungs and left you with a scream you couldn't find your mouth around. He typed nothing. He powered the phone off. He lay awake, listening to Junie's light breathing in the next room, and tried to fashion courage out of promises he didn't know how to keep. Monday morning found a copy of his debate notes on Mr. Carter's desk with a post-it. "Tighten your opening. Your story is not a weapon. It's a key. Use it to unlock, not to wound." When the last bell rang that afternoon, Ethan did not go home. He told Junie to stay with the neighbor. He told himself he'd go to the gym just long enough to say he knew nothing, that he'd keep his mouth shut. He cut across the football field, dusk pooling like ink in the low spots, the school building a hulking silhouette against a bruised sky. Lance was already there, flanked by two teammates. Their faces were made of the kind of bravado that cracks under cross-examination but can still break a nose before it does. A duffel bag lay at their feet. "Evening, storyteller," Lance said, smirking. "You alone?" Ethan's voice came, out thin. "What do you want?" "Your silence," Lance said breezily. "And a favor." "I don't." Lance's smile tightened. "Take this and leave it by the side door of room 102. Door will be open at 8. Turn off the hallway lights. Drop the bag. Walk away. That's it." "What's in it?" "Projectors," Lance said. "Among other things." His eyes glittered. "Easy, like a donation." "No," Lance chuckled, then stopped when Ethan didn't laugh. "You don't get to say no," he said softly. "You get to say thank you for the opportunity not to have your life ruined." The cold found Ethan's bones. "I didn't steal anything." "I know," Lance said, "but you look like someone who did. People see what they expect." The sew. Two boys at his shoulders shifted. One cracked his knuckles, the other zipped and unzipped his hoodie with the quick tick of a firefly. Ethan stood very still. Somewhere, a sprinkler sputtered. A plane scored the sky with a thin white thread. "You do this," Lance said, pleasant again, "and you're done. We'll never speak again. You don't—" He tilted his head. "Accidents happen." The duffel bag thumped against Ethan's chest. His hands closed around the strap before he could protest. When he tried to thrust it back, Lance took a single step into his space and said very quietly, "Don't be stupid." By the time Ethan backed away, his face felt numb. He did not run. He did not want to look like prey. He walked across the field, the bag heavy and awkward, shame burning in a hot white oval in the center of him. At the side entrance, the door to room 102, the AV storage room, was propped open a few inches, just as Lance had said. The hallway, lights hummed their dull insect song. Ethan stared at the switch. His hand hovered. Turn them off, drop the bag, walk away. He thought of Mr. Carter's handwriting. Your story is not a weapon. It's a key. He flipped the lights off. Darkness swallowed the corridor. He took 2 steps into the room. He set the duffel down. Then he stopped. His breath sawed in his ears. His head filled with a fog of panic so thick he could have carved initials in it. "Hello?" a voice said behind him. Ethan spun. The hallway lights snapped back on. Mr. Carter stood there with a custodian, Mr. Patel, his hand on the switch. His jacket sleeves were rolled up as if he had been in the middle of work and had decided to keep his forearms ready. "Ethan," he said evenly, "would you like to tell me what's happening?" Ethan's mouth flapped soundlessly. The custodian's eyes were wide, then sympathetic. "I'll give you a minute," he murmured and withdrew. "It's not—" Ethan choked. "It's not what it looks like." "I suspect it is exactly what it looks like," Mr. Carter said, then held up a hand when Ethan flinched. "Which is why we're going to choose our words carefully, and our next steps even more so. Did Lance ask you to bring this?" Ethan's chest caved in. He nodded, miserable. Did you look inside? No. Mr. Carter crouched, unzipped the bag, and revealed a projector, 2 laptops, and, tucked between them, a brown bottle with a rag stuffed in it. Mr. Carter's breath hissed in. He zipped the bag shut, skin gone pale under warm brown. Molotov, he said very calmly. They were setting you up for felony arson. Ethan's legs almost went out from under him. I would never. I know, Mr. Carter said, voice steel and velvet. And that, Mr. Miller, is why we are going to be brave and smart in that order. Where are Lance and his friends now? Backfield, Ethan whispered. They said the door at 8. Mr. Carter checked his watch. 7:42. Okay. He placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. It was heavy, anchoring. You are going to walk with me to the principal's office. On the way, you are going to text Junie's neighbor and ask her to keep your sister until your mother returns. You are not going to answer any calls that are not from me until this is over. Do you understand? Terror made words slimy in Ethan's mouth. What if they come after me? Then they will meet a teacher who doesn't mistake his job for survival, Mr. Carter said, and a principal who, God willing, remembers what restorative justice actually means. And if she doesn't? Then they'll meet me again, Mr. Carter said, with a sudden fierce smile Ethan had never seen on him before. And I don't forget. They moved quickly. The office, when they arrived, was a lit aquarium of paperwork and anxiety. Principal Graves, a woman who had spent the last 3 years trying to keep the district from swallowing her school, listened, her face turning the color of winter. Call Officer Keene, she told the receptionist. And Ward and don't call Lance's father, Mr. Carter said. Not yet. Graves frowned. We can't just... We can, Mr. Carter said softly, if we want the truth before the alibis. Ethan watched them talk around him like a storm forming, adults assembling themselves into shape. He stood very still, trying to keep his hands from shaking. Part of him wanted to run until the muscles in his legs burned clean, until all that was left was a hunger he could satisfy with a sandwich and a nap. But he stayed. He stayed because Mr. Carter's hand had squeezed his shoulder once, briefly, and he could still feel the strangely holy imprint of it. Officer Keene arrived, face composed. He listened, asked to see the bag. Mr. Carter showed it to him without removing the bottle. Keene's eyes sharpened. We need to get this out of the building, he said. And we need to keep Mr. Miller away from it. Chain of custody. Ethan felt himself disappear into the grammar of the moment. Mr. Miller, custody, evidence. He swallowed and forced himself back into his body. Officer Keene, he said. They'll be here at 8. Keene looked at the clock. 7:55. He nodded once. Principal Graves, can I use your office? Mr. Carter, with me. Ward 2. What about me? Ethan asked. The words came out, a child's. You stay here, Mr. Carter said. You've already done the brave part. Ethan sank into a chair, every muscle humming. He thought of the bottle in the bag, the cruel elegance of it, the way it would have turned him from rumor to headline. The door to the office closed. The clock ticked. The receptionist pretended to type. Somewhere a siren yawned and then stuttered. Out, sleepy, as if changing its mind. At 8:03, the hallway outside erupted, shouting, footsteps. The door burst open, and Officer Keene swept in with Lance and one of his teammates in tow. The second boy had apparently bolted. Keene's jaw worked. Lance's face was white with fury and something like fear, but he held himself like a boy who had never had to lower his voice to be heard. This is ridiculous, Lance said. You can't... Sit, Keene said. Lance sat. Ward hovered, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Mr. Carter stood by the window, arms folded. Where were you at 8? Keene asked. Practice, Lance said smoothly. Conditioning. Coach says conditioning ended at 6:30. We stayed late. Who's we? Me and Kyle, Lance said. And we were with my dad by 7. He can confirm. I'm sure he can, Mr. Carter murmured. Principal Graves shot him a warning look. Keene didn't look away from Lance. Do you know anything about missing equipment from the media center? No, Lance said. Do you know anything about a bag left in room 102? No, Keene leaned forward. Do you know anything about a bottle with a rag in it, placed between 2 laptops in that bag? Lance faltered, and for the first time a fissure appeared in the smooth slab of his face. His eyes flicked to Ethan and then back to Keene. It was a quick movement, a single bead of water tracing a path downhill. Mr. Carter saw it. He filed it away. We found your fingerprints on the storage room door, Keene said. Not entirely. A lie, Ethan realized with a jolt. Perhaps they had, or perhaps Keene was gambling. I'm going to ask again, Lance's jaw bulged. Lawyer, he said. The word hung in the air like a curtain that had fallen at the end of a scene. Keene's mouth thinned. You're a minor, he said. We'll call your father. They did. He arrived in 10 minutes, smelling of cologne and money, voice smooth as polished stone. He spoke to Principal Graves like someone who had made a hobby of bending rules into shapes that suited him. My son is not a criminal, he said, teeth flashing. And if you imply otherwise without cause, you'll regret it. Mr. Carter stepped forward. Cause is a bag in room 102, a timeline. Your son can't explain, and a frightened boy who was asked to be the scapegoat for a felony. Scapegoat, Hargrove Sr. repeated, amused. He looked at Ethan like one might look at a stain on a white shirt. Some boys are born to be goats. The temperature in the room shifted. Mr. Carter's eyes went very dark. Careful, he said so quietly that only those closest heard. I am a patient man. I am not an infinite one. Graves intervened. Officer Keene, we will proceed according to policy. Mr. Hargrove, we will inform you of any developments. For now, your son is suspended from extracurriculars pending the investigation. Hargrove Sr. smiled like a promise. We'll be in touch. When they left, the room exhaled. Keene ran a hand down his face. Ward sat heavily. Graves closed her eyes for a count of 5. Mr. Carter turned to Ethan. You okay? I don't know, Ethan said honestly. I feel like I swallowed electricity. Good, Mr. Carter said. Means you're alive. The debate tournament was 3 days later. In the interim, Ethan walked through hallways that had become both friendlier and meaner. Whispers rose, but so did nods. Sophia fell into step beside him and did not ask questions he couldn't answer. Junie showed him a crayon drawing of a boy, standing with a tall man and a little girl, and he had to go into the bathroom and splash water on his face until his breathing found him. In room 213, Mr. Carter met with them after school, fine-tuning arguments. Lead with the story, he told Ethan. Not your tragedy, your witness. Not what happened to you, what you saw about the way we punish. I don't want to talk about me, Ethan muttered. You will, Mr. Carter said. But on your terms. Sophia tapped her notes. We should quote the data from Oakland Unified. Lower suspensions, higher graduation. Add it, Mr. Carter said. But remember, hearts open doors. Numbers keep them open. Use both. The morning of the B tournament dawned with a stubborn fog. Students in 2 big blazers milled in the gym, pinning numbers to lapels. The smell of coffee and floor polish mixed into a scent that would, for some, always mean a certain kind of bravery. Their first round went surprisingly well. Sophia blazed through cross-examination like a lit fuse. Ethan's opening was rough but real, his voice low and steady. He didn't look at Lance, sitting 2 rows back with narrowed eyes. He didn't look at Mr. Carter in the doorway, hands folded, a calm lighthouse. Second round, tighter. Third round, better. By the time they reached semifinals, Ethan's lungs had stopped trying to crawl up his throat. He began to feel something dangerous and precious. the bridge between the boy he had been and the boy he could be, arcing like a silver thing under his feet. In finals, they faced two seniors from Lincoln, prep, polished and lethal. The room was packed. Even Principal Graves slipped in and stood at the back. Officer Keene stood beside her in plain clothes, and in a corner, arms crossed, Lance watched. Resolved, the judge intoned. Discipline in schools should be restorative, rather than punitive. Sophia spoke first, setting the stage. She was all sharp lines and luminous intelligence. Then it was Ethan's turn. He stood. The paper in his hand did not shake. He looked at the judge, then at the audience, then finally at Mr. Carter. The teacher nodded once. A permission and a dare. When I was 12, Ethan said, voice even, I broke a window. A ripple in the room. He kept going. I didn't. Mean to, he said. I was angry and I threw the ball too hard. The principal called my mom. She couldn't get off work, so they suspended me. 3 days. I sat in my room, and I learned nothing except how to be madder. When I came back, the window was fixed, but I wasn't. He paused. He could feel Lance's stare. He could feel Mr. Carter's steadiness like a hand on his back. If someone had made me meet the custodian who had to sweep up the glass, the teacher whose room got cold, if someone had asked me to help fix what I broke instead of just removing me from sight, I would have been embarrassed, yeah, but I also would have been responsible. Punishment taught me I was a problem. Repair would have taught me I could be part of the solution. He took a breath. Suspensions are easy, he said. They're also lazy. They take the kid out and leave the harm in. Restorative justice doesn't mean no consequences. It means different ones, honest ones, conversations, agreements, repairs. It doesn't let anyone off the hook. It gives them a way to climb back onto it. He quoted data. He cited studies. He told the story of a school in Colorado where fights dropped when circles replaced detentions. He spoke about dignity like it was a resource, like air or water, something you didn't notice until it was taken away. And at the end, he did something he had not planned to do. He said, last week I was almost the wrong headline. Because when people only see the worst version of you, that's the only version they know how to believe. But one person decided I was more than my rumor. He asked me what I planned to do with my story. So I'm telling you this. If we build schools that only know how to push kids out, we'll get exactly what we punish them for becoming. He sat. The room was so quiet he could hear the fluorescent light hum. Then Sophia's hand squeezed his under the table, quick and fierce. Mr. Carter's eyes shone and crinkled at the edges. They won. Not by much. Not by mercy. They won because their case was better. After the awards, after the applause, after the awkward photographs with paper medals and fake smiles, Lance disappeared. Ethan waited for the text that did not come. He walked out into a late afternoon so bright he had to squint. The fog burned off. The sky rinsed clean. Mr. Carter caught up to him on the steps. You spoke like someone who had found his front door, he said. I was scared, Ethan said. Courage is a door, too, Mr. Carter said. Sometimes the same one. Will Lance, Ethan started. Officer Keene found the third boy, Mr. Carter said. He talked. It will be messy. It will also be just. And me? You, Mr. Carter said, will help Mr. Patel in the media center for a week. Not as punishment. As understanding, he smiled. You broke nothing, but you need to learn how much work it takes to maintain a thing that looks like it runs itself. Ethan huffed a laugh. Okay. And you will keep debating, Mr. Carter said. Or writing, or whatever keeps your hands busy enough and your mind honest enough to hear yourself think. They walked to the edge of the parking lot. Cars chirped and unlocked. A flock of starlings lifted from the maple in a single shivering sheet. Mr. Carter, Ethan said, the words awkward and huge in his mouth. Why did you didn't have to... I mean, you could have stayed out of it. Mr. Carter looked at him for a long time, as if measuring what he could say without lying. When I was 23, he said finally, my little brother got caught up with a boy like Lance. He did a small wrong thing and got punished like. It was the only thing that defined him. He went away for 2 years. He came back mean and brittle and not mine anymore. I became a teacher because I couldn't fix what happened to him, but I could try to keep it from happening to somebody else. Ethan's throat closed. I'm sorry. So am I, Mr. Carter said. Every day, he exhaled. But then there are days like this. They stood there, 2 figures at the edge of a small victory, its light fragile and real. The next week, Ethan reported after school to the media center. Mr. Patel greeted him with tea that tasted like cinnamon and kindness. Together they cataloged returns, cleaned smudged screens, labeled cables that had the mischief of snakes. At first, Ethan moved with the self-consciousness of someone at an altar he did not deserve. After 3 days, he found a rhythm, a competence that felt like something inside him was being gently taught a new way to beat. On Thursday, a small girl appeared at the door with a permission slip clutched in her hand. Junie. I'm volunteering, she announced. We're returning our books. Mr. Patel smiled. Welcome, Miss Junie. You may be the most qualified worker in this building. Junie set to work with furious seriousness. Ethan watched her, soft pride flaring, and something else, an ache he did not have language for until later that night, when he lay in bed and realized it was hope. On Friday, Mr. Carter visited. He hovered in the doorway, hands in pockets, assessing. You look like a librarian, he said to Ethan. I feel like a locksmith, Ethan said. Mr. Carter laughed, that rare, surprised laugh that made his whole face crease. Well, he said, keep making keys. He turned to go, then paused. There's a community open mic Saturday. I'm reading. You should come. Ethan froze. Read what? What you wrote for debate, Mr. Carter said. Or something new, or nothing. Just come. Saturday night, the community center was a quilt of folding chairs and people who looked like they'd had long weeks and were trying very hard anyway. A handwritten sign at the door read, Speak your truth, then make room. Mr. Carter read a poem about his brother that made the room tilt and right itself. A 12-year-old recited a rap about math and mothers. An elderly woman told a story about a pie that tasted like forgiveness. When it was Ethan's turn, he almost didn't stand. His knees argued with him. His heart reminded him it could break and still pump. He walked to the microphone and let the silence come first. My name is Ethan, he said. I'm 17. I used to think stories were weapons. He swallowed. Now I think they're doors. He read. He did not tremble. He did not pretend. He spoke about windows and guilt, about circles and brooms, about being seen and not being undone by the seeing. When he finished, there was that same soft silence, the kind that holds, not withholds, and then hands, many hands, doing the small work of applause. After, on the sidewalk under a sky pricked with city stars, Mr. Carter clapped him on the shoulder. Proud, he said simply. Of me? Ethan asked, teasing to keep from crying. Of us, Mr. Carter said. Of what we did with an ugly week. They stood there a while longer. People streamed past, laughing, the hum of weekend relief, rising like steam. Somewhere down the block, someone played a trumpet with the ache of a man remembering the shape of a love he almost lost. Ethan listened, and for the first time in a long time, he did not feel like a rumor. He felt like a story whose ending he had not yet been handed, and that, he realized with a start, meant he could write it. Spring came to Greenwood in small pardons. The maple trees blushed green. The broken heater in room 213 was finally fixed. Lance transferred to a private school across town before the end of the semester, the official letter neat, the unofficial whispers uglier. Mr. Hargrove's lawyer sent one last note. Nothing came of it. Ethan kept going. Debate gave way to essays. that made Mr. Carter lean back in his chair and rub his jaw. Once, in May, Mr. Carter wrote in the margin, "You have a mind like a bridge builder and a heart like a medic. That combination can save a city if you let it." When the year ended, Ethan did not take his final exam so much as he offered it. He wrote about Baldwin and windows and how some days he wanted to smash everything he saw and other days he wanted to rebuild until his hands bled. He wrote about his mother sleeping and Junie dancing and how hunger had taught him both how sharp the world could be and how tender. He wrote, at the end, about a teacher who refused to look away. In June, at graduation, Ethan held his diploma like a piece of paper that was heavier than paper. Mr. Carter shook his hand and pressed a small book into it. Blank pages, leather. Cover. The words, "Make keys," embossed in gold on the front. "For what?" Ethan whispered. "For whatever locks you meet," Mr. Carter said. Years later, when Ethan stood in a classroom of his own, walls covered with student essays, a map of the city with pins in the neighborhoods where his kids lived, a chair with a leg that wobbled because some things never change, he would think about that gift. He would think about the night in room 102, the duffel bag, the choice between rumor and story. He would think about Mr. Carter's hand on his shoulder, the weight of witness. And on his desk, permanently, would sit a little sign he'd filched from the community center after someone forgot to take it down. "Speak your truth, then make room." He would look at the cracked faces in front of him and tell them, "I'm here to see you. I won't always get it right, but I won't look away." Sometimes a boy with the wrong kind of posture would linger after the bell. Sometimes a girl with collapsing eyes would stack chairs without being asked. Sometimes a rumor would sit in the back row and pretend not to exist. And sometimes, when the hallway was quiet, when the maple tapped at the window like an old friend, he would underline a line no one else noticed and wait for someone to tell him why. He had learned in a hard, luminous year that anyone can be a story. The miracle is to be a door and to stay when someone knocks.